Well, we get into our big stories this morning as we contemplate the lifting of COVID-19 restrictions and especially topical in there, the reopening of borders and, of course, what Mr. President said as well in respect of face masks. And then we'll tie in what Frontiers Healthcare Services has also been doing. There's the allegation by Member of Parliament for North Tongu, Okujetua Blakwa, that the entity has raked in over 900 million Ghana cedis. The president says, yes, they they came and they basically set up on their own. But is there justification, if these figures turn out to be true, about how much has been amassed within what space of time? Just about 2 years, thereabouts. So what do we do with some of these issues? Of course, the testing regime continues for those who will have to go through testing processes. We dilate on these matters and also talk about fuel price increments, on the back of which transport unions have said, we're going to up the ante again. We're going to increase transport fares by 20%. What will this mean for all of us? Joining us for the discussion, Professor John Gachi. He is Dean, School of Business at the University of Cape Coast. We also have Richard Amankwa, Deputy General Secretary with the GPRTU. Samson Asaki Awingobit is Executive Secretary, Importers and Exporters Association of Ghana. And we'll be roving on these matters as well later on the show. But let me start with you, Professor John Gachi. I would like to find out from you, yes, from the economic standpoint, the measure to reopen borders and all of that, but what was your general appreciation of the address on Sunday as Mr. President spoke? What were the highlights for you?
Well, I think the president just spoke what people were expecting for a very long time.
Oh, and Prof, if I may, I think this is only, I've not even said good morning to all of you. A very good morning to all of you. I'm so eager to jump into the conversation. Good morning to you,
Good
Prof.
morning.
Good morning to Richard. Good morning to Samson.
Good morning. Good morning to you, to yourself.
Good morning.
Great. So, Prof, do continue.
Yeah, I think he just did what people have been expecting for a very long time. You recall that the border closures in 2020 brought untold hardship.
Right.
One will also say that our people within the border enclave were discriminated against heavily. They were not given access to those freebies that were given. Various people complained, but that did not yield anything. Some of these people who cross the border on a daily basis before they get their daily bread, perhaps now that have been restored to them. Because government is also doing this because of the economic crisis we are in. Even though I do agree that with the closure of the borders, people still cross the border to undertake their business transactions. But the revenues that should come to the government perhaps have gone into private pockets of people who are to man the borders. These have been reported severally. So with the reopening of the borders, one will expect that much more revenue that was going through the private pocket will now come to government pockets and then resume economic activities for our people within the border enclave. But we shouldn't gloss over the huge discrimination that is suffered throughout this period.
Right, so those will be your initial comments. I'll come back to the economics of things, but let me also come to Samson Asaki Awingobit. For you, I had interacted with you earlier in the week, and you had shared some concerns. And here we are. You've heard now the address by Mr. President. Is it refreshing for you? Does it add anything to or does it ease in any way, alleviate the plight of your importers and exporters now that the land borders have been reopened and with some of the measures at the airport? Is it any help to you?
Well, thank you very much. Let me say a very big good morning to my colleagues, and especially Professor Gachi and the gentleman speaking from the Transport Union, and your good self and your listeners. I strongly believe that As Professor Gachi have just said, many Ghanaians who were getting their livelihood through these borders and with the COVID-19 for the past 2 to 3 years now has actually hit them very hard. And they've lost, many of them lost their economic activities. And then, of course, as he said, those who were risking their life were passing away, having ways and means that they were passing through by going to the border levels and then bringing their cargo or whatever through unapproved way. And those were asked to man the area where one way or the other getting their funding or getting the monies from them, but it wasn't hitting the government chest. That wasn't the best way. As we speak, I think that now that they open it completely, lawfully one can cross to do businesses in Togo and cross to do business in Ghana without any fear or any restrictions or hesitation. For me, we strongly believe that it's going to help Ghana, and of course, the kind of revenue that was lost during that period, Ghana will be able to recoup it. We only hope that, as the president said, that measures we're going to put in place, they should also put a third eye who will look at those people who are going to put the measures, implement the measures that the government intends to do at the border level, and so that we don't get complaints from the very poor business people, men and women who will be crossing the border to do their legitimate activities and come back to the country. On that note, I will say that it's good, it's better late than never, but I'm sure going forward, there are other policies that were stated in the finance minister policy statement that I have different views, and I don't know whether if you heard me speaking on some of the things,
right? And
if you want to discuss that, I can continue.
We shall get into those eventually. For now, I just wanted us to take a look at the address from some of these topical angles. Let me come now to Richard Amankwa, Deputy General Secretary with the GPRTU. For you, what is your quick reaction on the back of what we heard, the address on Sunday? And indeed, how do you feel this is going to impact your work, even before we get into the economic situation and the talk about transport fares and all of that? I'd like to hear from you. What do you make of the easing of restrictions and all that? What is your take? Do we have Richard Amankwa?
Yeah.
Right. Did you get the question?
Oh, please come again.
Richard, so I'm simply asking that on the back of the president's address on Sunday, what is your quick reaction to some of the measures to relax, the COVID-19 protocols and all of that, and the reopening of land borders? What is your quick take?
Oh, it's a welcome news for us because most of our branches, which operates on the borderlines, like Elubo, Sampa, Afrao, they were continuously complaining that the closure of the boundaries has affected their work. So most of them find it difficult to meet their internal expenses. So when we heard this, it was a welcome news for us, so that our branches can operate as they're supposed to be.
For you, Prof, so coming to some of the economic matters, the bread and butter issues, the land borders have been reopened, and we all know the impacts this has had. There's been rejoicing in areas like Paga, Elubo, Aflao, on the back of the reopening of the borders. This is something, like you rightly said, that had been called for time and again. Even before we get into that, do you feel it took us too long to reopen our land borders? It's been about 2 years. Other countries had already eased restrictions as far as their borders were concerned. Did we take too long? And what do you feel the economic impact has been if we did?
Yeah, I think we took too long a time to do this because when COVID started, we didn't know how to handle, but we were told that there is something called protocols that we need to observe. And if we are able to use our nose masks, if we are able to distance ourselves from people, if we ensure that we don't shake people, we are good to go. Therefore, all that is needed is to invest in some PPEs and some facilities to ensure that the protocols are adhered to at the border crossing. I believe we refuse to do that, thinking that people will be massing into our country with a disease. And I believe that took us a very long time to take the decision we are taking today. So I think that really affected economic activities across the borders. We should also appreciate the fact that people from Paga, Elubu, Paga, and then the northern part of the country who share border with Burkina Faso, for example, and part of the Volta region and Oti that share border with Togo. It will interest you to know that people have their farm across the countries because of their family relations. All these people were not going to farm, or if they want to go to farm, they go through a lot of difficulties, and that could have also affected their commitment to food production and then their generation of their own income. So I think that the decision has actually delayed, but as one of our panelists said, it is better late than never. So we will take it like that and believe that economic activities will resume. Yes, it is true that government has also suffered the pain of the economic situation associated with the closure of the borders. As I indicated earlier on, it was even reported by some of your colleagues who did underground investigation and realized that those who cross the borders, they are forced to pay unauthorized fees to border agents and other associates of these border agents, and all those monies were lost to the state. And so government also lost some revenue. That's what I said, that it is not merely because we think that we have overcome COVID-19, that is why we are opening the borders. Government believe that the reopening of the borders will allow for economic activities to ensure revenue mobilization across the borders. That is one key thing that drove government to make this decision at this crucial time. So we all suffered the economic pain, but unfortunately we cannot restore some of the economic delusion that our people were subjected to. As I indicated, no help was given to them at the border crossing. Right now that they are going to resume, some of them will need some small support in terms of capital to resume their businesses. Where would they get that at this crucial time? So it's not merely about opening of the borders, but also what we want to do to encourage the people to engage in economic activities to bring the revenue to government and for the people to sustain their livelihood and that of their families.
Okay, so two quick things. One on the back of what you just said, and it has been said that even as the borders have been reopened, things have been very slow, which is to be expected. But one thing to take stock of is the fact that while we have reopened our borders with three major countries, Togo, Burkina Faso, and the Ivory Coast, they have not reopened their end of their borders with us. So that in itself means that it's not all hip hip hooray for trade in these border entities. The other one has to do with the last point you made in terms of how these people, after having been out of business for about 2 years, are going to get themselves back onto the scene. What would your proposal be? What should government be doing at around this time to maybe encourage people to get back into business? Is it soft loans? What is it? We shouldn't forget, and I'm sure you're fully aware, the policy rate has gone up. So taking money from the banks now is going to be much more difficult. Your take on these two matters?
Well, I believe you heard me talking about discrimination. Whether it was intentional or unintentional, there was discrimination. You give monies to people to support their businesses, but the border enclave to a large extent were left out. You supported people with food, the border enclave were left out completely. So I believe this is their turn. The government should look out to them and support them, because it's at a point in time, generating revenue and sustaining people's livelihood must be investment from the state. So if you support them with what they should start with their business, you will support their business, they will then continue in a sustainable manner, support in contribution to revenue. So government should see it as investing in generating revenue by supporting these people in a manner that will help them regain their economic effort. So we shouldn't relate that to policy rate. Even in the policy rate regime, we know that people go to Exim Bank and they get facilities ranging from 0% to 5% thereabout, with moratorium to repay. Those people are also engaging in economic activities. And we all do agree the cumulative effect of small businesses, especially as we find across the borders, contribute more than all that we see from the huge businesses that are dotted across the country. So government should nurture small businesses, but in this particular case, I believe it is a duty that government must execute in the interest of business owners or those who are engaged in business activities within the border enclaves. That, I believe, is very important for government to do. And I also want to add that if you talk to market women in Makola, which I have done severally, we have family members who work in Makola, and we know how much money that cross the borders on daily basis, on weekly basis. That is huge, and you cannot imagine it. So I believe government should see it that this effort is going to revamp economic activities, and it involves huge movement of capital, and some already have, some don't have. Something should be done so that the overall essence of opening the borders will inure to the benefit of the country.
Very quickly, I just wanted you to add the bit about the other countries, the Ivory Coast, Burkina Faso, and Togo. They have not reopened our borders with us. What does that mean for us?
Well, I believe we need some information from government to be able to comment on that, because I will be surprised that we will be opening our borders and we don't talk to our colleagues to do same. I will be surprised that we want to open the borders and then we have not been able to talk to ECOWAS Secretariat to see what to do to make it a uniform decision across the various borders in the region. So having not received that information that was done, it is difficult for me to go into that. But it could also be a strategy that if we have opened ours, that may in one way or the other put pressure on other countries to see reason to open their borders.
Richard Amankwa, I just want to find out from you, do you have some of your members plying these routes? Do you have some of your members going through the border areas we speak of, Elubo, Aplao, and all of that? Do you have some of them using these routes, plying these routes, Paga, among others?
Oh, yes. We have most of our branches on the borderline. As I said earlier, we have like Elubo, Aplao, Sampa, Domahinko, and the rest. So all of them, they work in hand with the other country. So as my brother was saying, it will enhance our business, and those who are trying their work will start booming up.
But what reports have you got so far? We're getting information that the other countries have not yet reopened their borders to us. Are your drivers able to get into the Ivory Coast, for example, into the border crossing at Togo, at Aplao, and others? Are there any such reports?
Yeah, no, not yet. You know, DPS, we have structures. we have the regions and the branches. So whenever there's a problem or there's a case, they will report to the region.
Right.
And if the region couldn't solve it, is there then that they will pass it to the National Secretariat? So we have structured our union such a way that they can do their own business, and whenever it's beyond them, that's how they will report to us. But as of now, we've not received any report that they are not operating.